That's what it should be. Good morning again from the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, where I've been here since 6 o'clock, but well looked after by Jane, who is, I should say, is really in charge of the whole operation, and make sure that I'm set up by the time that I have to go. And this morning it was 7 o'clock going to Mexico. And if you want to see that interview with Santos, who is this bouncy, exciting musical director from New York, then you can check in with Facebook or YouTube and take a look at what he had to say. Pretty exciting because we have sowed the seeds of doing a Tom Paine operetta and doing it in this very bar, which would mean a very tight squeeze and a very intimate performance. But nonetheless, what an exciting thing to do is an operetta on Tom Paine in the White Hart, where he actually developed the rights of man and quaffed his ale. And it is a distinct possibility as a result of that interview this morning. So do take a look. Lots of other exciting things in that interview as well. But then we went on to the review of the news and what's happening in the world and a little bit of what's happening in Lewes. So you can find that on YouTube as well from Mirador Television today. For some reason, we got blocked out of some social media, but we very, very quickly got back in. And who knows about the vagaries of why they block you out? None of it makes much sense. But we got back in, and now let's see. It's 9:44. We're going to spend another sort of half an hour or so looking back well, not really looking back. One of the themes of Mirador is crime, looking after crime, and that we are going to do. Then we are into travel, and that we are going to do. And then we are into something else, and I can't remember what it is, that we're going to do. So what I think we'll do is, the thing that I couldn't remember is Tall Tales. So let us go to Tall Tales, and introduced by our beautiful former, what was she, presenter, Annie Verrill. Are we? No, we're not. Not at the moment. Not at the moment, Mr. Keith. Sometimes these things simply do not work. Yes.
But for the mafia, that's a sign of execution. The old man tells us of his own brush with the mafia execution squad. I wonder if it's true.
Hello. Is English, can't you? And I thought, well, yeah, I suppose you can. And he said, why do you say that? He said, because he eats his pie with a spoon. Canadians always eat with a fork. What a giveaway. Never mind the blazer, never mind the haircut. But it was that summer that my actual athletic prowess really came out. Because I broke the half-mile record and the high jump record within minutes of each other. And I also, not sure it was a record, but did pretty well in the weightlifting department. That was a few days later. But first of all, it was the half-mile record. When you go to work in these camps, there's not much to do. You work, you sleep, you eat, And after a month or two, you get out and you pick up your check. Very nice it is too. But on a Sunday, no television, no, limited books, no newspapers. They would probably come midweek. So you just hung around and it was very boring. Understanding that and needing work done, the camp bosses would say, would you like to earn some more money? As a university student, wow, would I like to earn some more money? And you got time and a half for working on a Sunday. It's rather nice. So this particular Sunday, I was deputed to go up the mountainside and to start digging little potholes to see whether we could hit gravel, stones that they could use to lay on the bed of the road which we were building. So off I trotted, hey-ho, shovel slung over my shoulder, clambered up the mountainside, found a suitable place to start to dig holes, and started to dig away. After a little while, I heard some stones being loosened up on the railway track. I paid no attention at all, because there was a railway gang that lived, yes, they stayed up in a little hut on the railway site, and they, like us, had nothing to do on a Sunday, so they would earn some extra money going out, testing the track, and that sort of thing. That's who I thought it was. I continued to merrily dig away at my hole, hoping that I would hit gravel pretty soon, because it's back-breaking work. And then I looked up to see a huge grizzly bear coming down the mountainside, his beady eyes fixed on me. I hadn't had lunch yet. He was determined to have his lunch, and I was it. I threw the spade down, and I took off down the mountainside. Now I was dressed in work clothes. I had big work boots on. They came way up past my ankles. They got thick soles. They were leather. They were toe-capped with hard stuff, so that if you dropped anything on them, you wouldn't crush your feet. And I took off down the mountainside at a great rate of knots. The spring runoff was still there. Water was still cascading down the mountain. So the mud must have been, good 2 or 3 feet deep at some stages. I managed to avoid disappearing into the mud altogether. But at the side of the track, down the mountain I went, lickety-split, determined that this grizzly was not going to have me for lunch that particular day. I came round a bend in the track, and there was a D9 Caterpillar tractor. Now, if you've never been on a construction site and you've never seen a D9 Caterpillar tractor, they are huge. They are huge. And they stand about a story and a half. So if you look at a small house and try to guess that you're looking at just below the bedroom window, that's about the height 7, 8 feet. The driver said that I did not touch his vehicle. I did not touch the bulldozer in leaping into the seat beside him and clutching him, trembling with fear that this grizzly was going to come around and find that the D9 Caterpillar tractor was no obstacle whatsoever, and he would have double lunch. He'd have both of us. The old Caterpillar driver, the tractor driver, of course, had been around for a long time, and he was killing himself with laughter that I'd come down the mountainside at such a rate. But he swore that I did not touch his vehicle, that I leapt from the ground and I got into the seat beside him. So I'd done 7 feet. And even in those days, the high jump record was only about 6 feet something. So there I had set one record. But I previously set the record for the half mile, because it had been about half a mile that I'd raced down the mountain to get out of the way of the grizzly who wasn't stopping. He was coming after me. and he was determined, as grizzly bears can be, to have me as a meal. So in talking to the driver later and figuring out at what time
I actually saw the grizzly. To what time I reached his tractor, we figured that I beat the half-mile record by a good 5 or 6 seconds. So two records in one afternoon. And believe me, when the adrenaline gets going, it's amazing how it pumps you. It's amazing that you can do all sorts of things which you wouldn't do ordinarily. And it was a grizzly that helped me achieve this marvelous record-breaking feat. And afterwards, I felt quite good about it, except, apart from the driver, there was nobody to confirm what I'd done. So I never, ever got a gold medal, a silver medal, or a bronze medal for breaking this record. All I got was a giggle from the driver, and perhaps a little self-satisfaction of knowing that I had been as speedy as I had, even though I was driven by a grizzly bear. And if you say, oh, well, was it a grizzly bear? Yeah, you can tell a grizzly. It's not only his size, but a grizzly, unlike any other bear, has a hump just behind his head. So it is easy to identify. Later on, I learned that black bears you can frighten off a little. The only time to worry about a black bear is if it's got its young with them. It is very protective of its cubs, or if it's ill, in which case it will pay no notice. But I later on managed to control black bears and brown bears with very little problem, bravely waving my hands. But this was my first experience in the wild with a wild animal who was ready to be feral. He wasn't going to take a polite young Englishman who said, I'm terribly sorry to disturb you. Seriously, he wanted me. A few days later, I was working around the camp when the foreman came and said, Keith, go with Joe over there, take this pump and take it up about 100 yards above the camp, because there is a spring there, and later somebody will come and they will attach the pump to the spring and we can have some fresh water. The pump, I don't know, is 80, 90, 100 pounds. It was heavy. Joe grabbed one side of it and I grabbed the other. We could just about manage it, and we went up to the spot designated by the foreman, found the spring, and as I was about to put down, or together we were about to put down this huge pump, I heard a rustle in the trees behind me, and I looked around, and here was this great big teddy bear face gazing through the greenery at me. Now, I suspect this was not a grizzly this time, that it was a brown bear, but I didn't know the difference at the time. And anyway, all I could see was its face, and it was a teddy bear face, and it was looking at me. We'd obviously disturbed the bear when he was looking for various bits of greenery and nuts and so on and so forth to solve his hunger problem, but I didn't know that. I yelled at Joe, "Bear!" and took off back to the camp. I didn't break any speed records, I don't think, but when I got back to the camp, I realized I'd left Joe well behind. But the pump was still in my hand. I'd carried what it took two of us, struggled two of us, to take up to the spring. I'd brought back on my own because the adrenaline had flown and the fear factor had kicked in. He said that I performed superhuman feats. Well, what an athletic summer that was. And I'm happy to say that as it did go on, I learned a bit more about the wildlife. And although I, to this day, would be very careful about meeting a bear in the wild, generally speaking, unless it's a grizzly, and don't mess with a grizzly, then what you would find is that the other bears are as shy of you as you are of them, and a little arm waving, and you can get rid of them. And actually much later, many years later, I lived on a steelhead trout fishing river in North Vancouver. I had 3 acres and a beautiful house, and it was right at the base of the mountains.
Morning, Kevin.
I had a Great Dane, which is a wonderful dog, very affectionate. but also very protective. I was fiddling around on the banks of the river one day, and once again I heard a rustle. Didn't pay too much attention. And then I looked up, and here was a huge black bear coming towards me. Well, I'd learned my lesson this time, hadn't I? I raced towards him, yelling, "Bear! Bear!" waving my arms and sort of, "Go away!" Actually, I wasn't as polite as that. I was saying to him, "Push off." And at the same time, yelling to my wife, "Get the dog in, get the dog in," because my fear was that the Great Dane would come rushing out, would protect me. The bear would, with one swipe, break the dog's neck. Bears are terribly powerful animals. But instead, the bear took one look at me when he became aware of me waving my arms, put his nose in the air, sniffed, and sort of said, "You're not worth bothering with," and ambled back into the orchard and paid absolutely no attention. Luckily, my wife had kept the dog in, so both the dog and I were saved on that particular afternoon. But if you really want to be athletic, get yourself into a situation where a grizzly is coming at you, because believe me, the adrenaline will kick in. And if you can possibly record it on your camera, on your phone nowadays, while you're doing that, you can prove that you will beat world records. In my case, the half mile and the high jump, all in a space of a couple of minutes or so. Well, that was my first experience in a summer in Canada, and I had many more, and hopefully I'll get the opportunity to tell you about some of them. Till then, toodle bit.
Yes, this is Mirador Television, broadcasting out of the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, live. But every live word that we utter is recorded and appears on Facebook. So you have the opportunity to tune in as we do it, or to check in later to see what on earth we've been rabbiting about today. We started at 7 o'clock this morning. It won't be every morning. Tomorrow morning will be 8 o'clock. We like to lie in just a little bit. But occasionally we talk to people halfway around the world, and there's 7 hours difference in time, which we did this morning. We went to Mexico to talk to Stefanos, the musical and artistic director of the Teatro, and I can never remember the last name because it's Italian, in New York, and a man who is full of vitality and ideas and fun and good to talk to. So if you want to hear what we chatted about today, by all means, tap in. Now, you will have noticed a difference about Mirador. It's a subtle difference to start off with, but we are bringing you now different people, different programs. Yesterday, we introduced you to Bethany, who will be co-hosting from time to time. And today, we had Stephanos. We reminded you about Stephen Kaplan, and we've just had a tall tale. And as Annie Verrill said, do you believe him or do you not? It's up to you. But these tall tales are great memories for me. We also chatted yesterday to a new addition to our team of reporters from France, Harry Atherton, a friend of mine from 50 years ago, when we formed a rugby club together in Vancouver, and this was dignified by cocking a snoot at the tough, rough rugby players of the time, because we started each match with "Ring Around the Roses." And to this day, first of all, the rugby team still exists, the Scribes, a team based on journalists, and the tradition of "Ring Around the Roses" exists to this day. So 50 years of very interesting times. But Harry went on to do all sorts of things, and running a ranch in Bolivia, doing PR for Air Canada, and eventually ending up in France, where he resurrected and saved several mansions, and was rewarded by the French government for doing so. He's about the same age as me, and we had a good chat yesterday. But he has agreed to be our correspondent in France. And so once a week at least, we will be hearing from Harry, although next week we will continue his life story, which we weren't able to finish yesterday. And we have recruited another couple of people, but who will not appear until next week. And one of them is Dr. Mark Maybe, is a principal of a university in Docklands, but also a very live wire. We only have live wires on Mirador. People who do things that are unusual, do things in a different way. And Mark has certainly very different and very successful. And he is going to join Suzanne Mouchot from New York, who is a regular with us, but also very bright and very dynamic. And the two of them are going to, in their own inimitable way, let us know their views and what they think. It's something they believe in passionately, and that is further education. But not further education in terms of just going to college, but further education in how you can get experience in various areas, and how you should actually react to that to try and help further your education, but also further your own personal development. So there are all sorts of things to look forward to, all sorts of things that we've already introduced, and which will be sticking. But right now, let's because we major with the two Bs, the two barristers who were also on yesterday morning, let's follow on with our theme of a crime, and hopefully we'll watch this, which is not new, but we haven't shown it for some time. Yes, yes. My bank? Yes, yes. Of course. Absolutely. Right away. Hello, I'm Keith Hayes, with another edition of our crime show, Catch 'em. I just said yes to a caller who told me he was from my bank and wanted details of my account. He said I needed to verify that a large sum of money had been transferred out. Well, there's no fool like an old fool, and I gave them to him. Sadly, of course, the call wasn't from my bank at all. It was from a member of a gang of con artists who wanted to gain access to my account and my cash. Actually, I didn't fall for it. But it's an old con, and each generation of criminals using it sound more plausible than the last lot. A team of these con artists has been operating in the Seaford area recently, so be on guard. The con men in this case have been bolder than most and pretended to be police officers investigating fraud at Argos. So far, the callers have been frustrated because their targets have recognized the call for what they are: fraudulent. But this is a common crime, and many people in a moment of panic fall for it and reveal bank and credit card details. They're very sophisticated, so don't fall for it. Keep your bank details and your cash to yourself. Along with the widespread use of computers has come online crime. Police in Sussex are investigating reports of online extortion threats to business enterprises. A gang has been making threats online that if their victims do not pay virtual currency into an online account, their websites will be attacked. Businesses in the hospitality sector have been especially hit by these thugs. In just a week, 5 businesses, restaurants, B&Bs and hotels across the county have reported receiving emails threatening to hack their websites. The criminals demand that the owners pay £500 by Bitcoin into an online payment address. The Sussex Police cybercrime team are investigating. Vandalism is the deliberate act of destroying or defacing the property of another person without permission. That includes graffiti. If you want to practice this art form, do it on your own house. If you do it on someone else's property, you've broken the law, no matter how pretty it is. It's a funny old country we live in, but do have a thought for people in France. They're breaking the law if they call a pig Napoleon. Back at home, it's illegal to keep a pigsty in front of your house. And rugby players take note, it's illegal to sing any profane or obscene song or ballad in any street. If Monday morning is wash day for you, then dry it in the back of the garden. It's illegal to erect a washing line across any street. And if you're visiting London, be patient in the Underground station. Under the terms of a bylaw, it's illegal to jump the queue in the tube ticket hall. Finally, a warning to our local MP. MPs are not allowed to wear armour in Parliament. A statute brought into law in 1313 forbids the wearing of armour by members of Parliament when they go to the House of Commons. The law has never been repealed. Standing on the outskirts of Lewes, the town's jail looks formidable. It was built in 1853, and over the years has played host to a number of famous names from the world of crime. The Russian prisoners from the Crimea War, who were held in the old naval prison, have become famous over time. There's a monument in St. John sub Castro churchyard to those inmates who died while in captivity. It's paid for by Russia. A play has been written about them, and only recently the Russian ambassador paid a visit to the site. Less well known is that 300 Finnish grenadiers, fighting for the Russians, were incarcerated in Lewes jail, not the naval prison. They were the new prison's first inmates. Several leaders of the Irish Easter Uprising in Dublin of 1916 were held there. They included Eamon de Valera, later the Republic's first president and Prime Minister. Probably the most famous murderer in the prison was John George Haigh. He was known as the acid bath murderer. That's the way he tried to dispose of his victims. He appeared at Lewes Assize Court in July 1949 and was found guilty in just 17 minutes. He was hanged by the then famous Albert Pierrepoint in August 1949. A notorious local murder in 1912 saw John Williams hanged in Lewes prison. Williams shot a police inspector in Eastbourne, for which he paid the ultimate price. The notorious Cray twins, Ronnie and Reggie, were imprisoned in Lewes jail in the 60s. The colourful, so-called celebrity gangsters managed to keep business going as usual while behind bars, hiring out protection teams to Hollywood stars. Frank Sinatra hired 17 of them from the Crays. No prison worth its salt can exist without at least one ghost, and Lewes is no different. Local gossip has it that one of the corridors is haunted by a man in Victorian-style prison garb. He is said to have dropped dead of a seizure when he saw his son enter the same block as a fellow prisoner. So keep your eyes peeled as you pass the prison on the way out of Lewes on the road to Brighton. You never know what you might see. And that's Catch-Up for this week. Join me next week for another look and roundup of crime within the district of Lewes. Keep
Keith Hayes, South Downs Tea. There's one crime that's still on the statute books that I haven't mentioned, and that's ringing somebody's doorbell and running away.
Now, that was on video, the last two programs. I'm not sure because I have no way of monitoring at the moment whether, in fact, the quality is good, bad, or indifferent. All I can tell you is that our little yellow box that we've fiddled with arrived late last night in the post. So, because we started so early this morning, we didn't have time to check it out and institute it. But today we should be able to do that. Which should guarantee the quality that you expect and that we expect. So forgive us if, in fact, that stuff was a bit murky. We are working very heavily to keep things going as fast and as reliably as we possibly can. Now, it is 13 minutes past 10 o'clock. We are going to go to the start the way that we began this morning, and go until 10:30. We went to 12:30 yesterday because we had so much to show and so many places to go to. And I'm happy to say that the quality was pretty good yesterday because most of it was live. This morning we reverted to some video. Now, what I'm going to do is to reprise what we did very early this morning, and that is look at the news headlines, the papers again, to bring you up to date with what's happening, because there's a lot of things which we should really pay heed to, starting off as we are in the new month of September, and with a couple of by-elections coming up, and then of course next year we have a full election. So it's into full mode in terms of news. So let's just take time to see what we've got in terms of newspaper headlines. The Financial Times it normally would try deal in business matters, but it leads with what is the key issue at the moment is crumbling schools crisis puts Sunak on the back foot as two elections loom. And basically, the newspaper says he's been forced to start off the new political year on the back foot. The paper claims the Tory party's autumn relaunch has been derailed by the crumbling schools crisis. It's just as two by-elections are approaching. And Sir Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet reshuffle is featured on the front page because he is returning to Blairism. In his reshuffle, he's put in 5 Blairites, former Blairite cabinet ministers, which brings a big lurch to centre politics rather than the extreme left Corbynista era the Labour Party has undertaken or experienced recently. Now, one thing about there is some suggestion in some papers that it may be that the concrete provider stinted on quality. There's nothing proven. It's only just at the moment a little charge. But if I could say that in the United States there have been a number of scandals where overpasses have collapsed, roads have collapsed because of that very same con trick. In other words, the quality of the concrete promised as opposed to delivered have been very different, and that politicians and manufacturers and suppliers have shared the difference in what was paid and what was actually charged in the public purse. Nobody is suggesting at this stage that this is happening. It's just saying that it's a possibility. In the metro, we've got the concrete bungle, and it says it focuses its front page on comments made by the Prime Minister and Education Secretary regarding the crumbling concrete debacle. According to the paper, Mr. Sunak refuses to take the blame, and Ms. Keegan has protested that the issue of unstable school buildings is not her fault. What happened to the old Roosevelt philosophy, where he had on his either Roosevelt or Truman had on his desk in the White House in the Oval Office is the buck stops here. And that's really the trouble with politics nowadays. Is it's not just the Conservatives, Labour and Liberals are all the same. The moment there is a sign of scandal, the moment a sign of things going wrong, they all race for cover. And that undermines confidence in our politicians and our political systems. The Eye, Sunak accused of cutting school repair fund, and Starmer calls up Blairites to fight election as the left is demoted. So the paper has decided to splash on Labour's shadow cabinet reshuffle. 5 MPs from the Tony Blair era have been promoted in what the Eye says is Mr. Starmer's aim to build a centrist team to sell his party's voters. In fact, it's there he is. Hardly an inspired leadership so far, but is he doing the right thing to swing the country behind him? One cannot tell. And the newspapers are asking the same question. But is this a quiet man who is creeping up on the outside because he thinks things through carefully? It was not easy to get rid of the Corbynistas, but he's done it. It's not easy to bring the party lurching back to centre-left politics. Not easy. I'm not a supporter of Mr. Sunak. I'm actually, on the contrary, my politics is just a bit to the left. But there we go. There I am, I do try to look at politicians in a neutral light. What are they doing? Is it right? What are they doing? Is it wrong? What are they doing? Is it stupid? Is it sensible? And so on. And I have to say that my initial reaction to Mr. Starmer is that while I was skeptical, as a lot of other people were, about his protestations of bringing the Labour Party back into mainstream politics by moves, he has made a move. Will he stick to it? Will he be allowed to stick to it? How powerful are his backbenchers? Because there is no question that in politics at the moment, we have had the situation where the tail has wagged the dog, and the politics has been dictated by the backbenchers on both sides. The cabinet, the government have often lost control, and not a very happy situation, but one that we want to make sure is whether we approve of the various parties and leaderships' philosophies, policies, statements of what they're going to do is welcome or not, is that it is them, the leaders, leading and not being wagged by the backbenchers. Right, okay. It says my privacy settings have blocked access to my location. Well, let me tell you where I am. I'm in the White Hart Hotel in Lewes, in East Sussex. This is Mirador Television, and we broadcast daily from the White Hart. And at the moment, we sometimes are starting at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the reason we're starting at 7 o'clock is because we are going to various parts of the world where it is midnight in the oasis, and we can't ask people to stay up until 1 or 2 in the morning just to appear on Mirador. So we shift our start time to 7 o'clock, which we did yesterday morning and we did this morning, which we won't do, I don't think, tomorrow morning unless anything unexpected happens during the day. But we will begin at 8 o'clock as usual, and tomorrow is a day in which we welcome the return of John Henty to bring a bit of fun and games to us. And it may be that Stuart Dolby will be back with a little bit of energy matters, but we have to see about that. And there'll be 1 or 2 more people, but not least of which is we shall see the return of a young lady who is proving to be a real fine. She is just excellent on her first day out, which was yesterday, and that is Bethany. Is I think I'll just stick with Bethany at the moment to make sure I get her name correct and not cock it up. I think I know the second one, but it takes me 3 or 4 times now because of my luxurious age to have things stick in my mind. Bethany will be joining us tomorrow, and a lovely lady she is, but also very inquiring. It turns out to be a good interviewer, and all in all, it's a benefit and an addition to our programs. Anyway, that is tomorrow, and we will be starting at 8 o'clock, back to the usual time, until I think Friday, when we may have to start again at 7. But for the moment, we'll, let's just continue with the papers and what we see next. But this has nothing to do with schools. This is the Star, the Daily Star. Dracula's a vegan. Is nothing sacred, they say. They've got a picture of Dracula on the front. Garlic, my favorite. Fangs ain't what they used to be. The Star is offering readers a more light-hearted splash on Dracula's eating habits. Like all the other papers, it has still made space for the school building story, opting to use a photoshopped image of Miss Keegan with a clown's nose. It's very irreverent, the Star, but very amusing. And if you get the opportunity, sneak into your local newsagents and just pretend to look for something else, but cast a glance at the Star. It will give you a good chance to get the day off to a good start. Now, the Daily Express it finds it difficult. It finds it very difficult because it is a government-supporting paper to say anything nice about the opposition. So it's ignored on the front page anyway, the Starmer story. And what it's gone with is a miracle weight loss jab to save lives and cut a 6.5 billion bill. we should actually have a picture of a hospital, which we don't. So we do we have a picture of a hospital? I don't think that we do. We should have, and we haven't. So we'll have to leave that for the moment, and just carry on with giving you a resume of the paper. So the miracle weight loss jab is to save lives and cut 6.5 billion off the cost of weight reducing remedies. The Health Secretary Steve Barclay's comments on Wegovy, which are injections, have made the front page of the Daily Express. Mr. Barclay refers to the weight loss drug as a miracle and says it could help cut out the NHS's 6.5 billion annual bill for treating and tackling obesity. The Guardian, back to politics. Sunak under pressure over school funding as the concrete crisis grows, it says. And Miss Keegan, once again, she's the health secretary, has been forced to apologize over an unguarded comment made after an interview about the crumbling concrete crisis. While Mr. Sunak is under pressure, the Guardian says the topic of Labour's shadow cabinet reshuffle is the paper reports that MPs on the Blairite wing largely prospered as a result. So it really threw that story away in favour of having a go at Sunak over the concrete crisis, but mainly that Miss sorry, I've lost my place here. Is the health secretary. Is Gillian Keegan let loose with something of a foul-mouthed tirade, not realizing that the microphone was still on. Where she was trained, and that's another bugaboo of mine, is nobody is trained anymore. As a consequence, we got very shabby people who appear in the public eye. Very shabby indeed, and that goes for most broadcasters, and certainly for politicians. But she should have been trained to keep her mouth shut until such time as she is absolutely sure that there is no microphone within hidden distance to pick up what she says. So I have no sympathy whatsoever. You can't do your job properly, suffer the consequences. Startling new revelations about a terrible night Diana died by Andrew Neil in the Daily Mail, but a minister's TV blunder that says it's all about Tory chaos. Now that's from the Mail. Tory chaos. If the Mail is saying that, it is Tory chaos, because the Mail also has a leaning towards centre right, and normally is not too critical of things that the Tory party cocks up. But on this one, it's Tory chaos as the school concrete crisis dominates the front pages again. The Prime Minister has been urged to get a grip, and the paper reports that teachers spent last weekend scrambling to erect tented classrooms. Oh my goodness me, what a mess indeed. Incidentally, Quinton Letts, a columnist that I've always enjoyed following from the days when he was actually the drama critic for the Mail, he's now become back to use his very caustic wit in a column on the in the Daily Mail. And today his headline is, "From number 10 came a prolonged yowling of anguish." Oh, ho, ho. Well, that's worth reading. The Mirror. It's revealed that Sunak blocked cash for rebuilding schools, and the Education Secretary says she's done a good job, as thousands of kids are in limbo. Then they spoil it all by saying the class clowns. For God's sake, can we get rid of this class system? It is not true. It is not real. It is just something that people have picked on because some people make a lot of money and some people don't. But generally speaking, I spend a lot of time talking to people, and it takes me a long time to figure out which class they're from nowadays. It is not a class issue. It is a issue of political views, of how we see things. So can we please stop? Mirror, you probably had got a good story, and what did you do? You spoiled it because you bring in the class issue. Don't want to hear it anymore. Yes, there are differences. Yes, there are injustices. But this business about the Tories did this and so on, it's rubbish. It's nonsense. It is a group of people who happen to be in power. That's what it is. And some of them are rich and some of them are poor. And you would be startled at the number of people who are supposedly on the left and supposedly is the lower class who actually live in big houses, drive big cars, and go on expensive holidays. So let's stop this class system nonsense. Class clowns are the words, that's what the Mirror says, to describe the Prime Minister and Education Secretary. The paper refers to thousands of kids waiting in limbo to start the new school year. And Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson has called the handling of the crumbling concrete situation an utter shambles. Well, she's right about that, but not right about class. Get rid of it. Get over it. We've always had layers of society since the Romans. And the Romans, of anybody, and I have a great admiration for the Romans, fierce and vicious though they were, because of what they achieved. The Romans were, if you like, the biggest class system ever that we've had that prevailed in this country. The Daily Telegraph. Concrete crisis and hot mic rant leave Keegan fighting for survival. Well, that's true. Miss Keegan is fighting for survival over her handling of the schools crisis, says the Telegraph. The Education Secretary is also said to be facing pressure after officials admitted to her being on holiday this week before schools were ordered to close. The paper's reports. But it also covers two other important stories. Kim Jong-un will travel to Russia to sign a weapons deal with Putin. He's the bloke that lets off rockets willy-nilly into the Japanese Sea and scares the hell out of the people in Tokyo. If he is getting involved with Putin, and Putin is not necessarily the most stable of people, is God help us. And yet they're going to sign a weapons deal. And the other story is banks to be punished with fines if they wrongly shut out politicians. Though there are all sorts of things, in my opinion, that banks should be punished for, and not least of which is them actually dealing with the general public, and particularly their smaller investors, the smaller savers. Is since they've relied upon computers, it is diabolical the way that they behave, and they should be fined as well. Never mind about fining politicians. Politicians racing for cover again. Those politicians should take the rest of us with them. And to the utility companies, for that matter. They are all out of control. And while we're busy poking around with silly nonsense things, this is one of the most undisciplined and unfair issues in our society. And it's about time that the governments and politicians recognize it and to bring some of these banks and utilities companies to heel. Their systems are diabolical. And I now, on this program, recommend to who you don't deal with. And at the moment in my sights is O2. It's a badly operated, badly organized, badly managed company that treats its people who use its services with disdain. Absolute disdain. So you're warned. You sign up with O2 at your peril. Anyway, I've had a good rant there, and that's taken us to 10:36. And I think that my voice is running dry this morning. My voice is running dry. So what I'm going to do is I know I irritate a good friend. he likes me irritating him, so he can yell at me. I played yesterday our version of the Potter's Wheel. It's not very long, but it is a wonderful landmark in Lewes, one that is very historic, but is quite beautiful. And it is our version of the Potter's Wheel. Here we go. Now, I was going to say a toodle pip, but out of the corner of my eye, my good friend and one of the supporters of Mirador that makes sure that everything goes along tickety-boo is Kevin. And he quite often sneaks in and starts to check the purity of the beer in the White Hart Bar, and he gets me to taste it. And I think he's going to do that. So I'm going to hang on just for a moment or two in case I'm right, and then I get a little sip of beer. Oh, he shouts at the bar, "You are!" So I can expect a little glass of beer just to test this morning. One of the things that I love about this testing of the beer is I get it before the sun is over the yard arm. I get it before anybody else in Lewes, except possibly the publicans. It's just a wonderful feeling to feel that liquid going over my palate and down into my gullet long before anybody else gets a chance to have a sip. And worth waiting around for. Is it good stuff this morning, Kevin?
It looks okay.
It looks okay. So I am the final arbiter. I'm the final chap who checks it out. What a privileged position I find myself in. All because I'm just on telly. That's all. Because I'm on telly, I get to do exciting things. And here he is. Look at that beard. Isn't that a wonderful beard? Bow down so people can see the beard. There, that's a fantastic beard. Look, he had it trimmed, yes. Thank you, Kevin. Here we go. Yes, indeed. Oh, gosh, it is. It's a fine beer. Now, this is on tap in the White Hart Bar. You can come in. What time? 11 o'clock, Kevin.
Yeah.
You are allowed in another 20 minutes. I, on the other hand, get to taste it while the sun is over the yard arm, or before the sun is over the yard arm. Although our argument is the sun is over the yard arm somewhere in the world, so therefore we can taste a little bit of the beer. Oh. Well, we started the day with a nice cup of coffee. We've ended it with a nice glass of beer. So, until tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, not 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, at 8 o'clock. But if you want to see the interview this morning at 7 o'clock, it is on YouTube, and you can watch it. For some reason, we were stopped from showing it on Facebook earlier today, but we've fixed that. So we're back on Facebook. And you can catch us there, but not all today's programs. So go to YouTube and you can see what we were up to at 7 o'clock this morning. For the moment, just a reminder for you to come back and join us at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning or any time thereafter. Toodle, toodle, pip. Bye-bye.